California, Los Angeles, declared that all schools, no matter what, will be closed for the entire fall. And Harvard announced that fall and spring teachings, and other universities too, will be completely online. So we don't really know what will happen here. The numbers are going up in 38 states. New York is doing very well. We had one day even without a corona death. So it is quite a complicated time for everybody in theater. Of course, still there's no end of that closing inside for sure till the end of the year. Nothing will happen. And theater artists, of course, are in the center of what it means to be necessary or not necessary, essential or not essential. And now they are forced to stay at home and think things through and wonder what their contribution is to society, to the arts. I always do think that great theater, great performances, and also sports is a reward of a functioning society, a great society. And the better it is, more better theaters you will see. So at the moment, we don't see it. And especially here, we know it's not working. And it's been a disastrous leadership. Today, we have with us a very significant artist, a young director from Europe, a young female director, Susanne Kennedy, who is based in Berlin. She studied in Amsterdam. And she has done extraordinary work for the theater. And we are really, really thrilled to have you with us, Susanne. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I'm just going to read a few lines from her bio. She, in her work, which I saw the opening of ULTRAWORLD in January, I was lucky to be that. She responds to the balance of power between bodies, technical objects, and machines, with aesthetics that is beyond the human or the human body. Distorted by masks, playback, dialogue, doppelgängers, and multimedia, the actor confronts the audience with a post-humanistic subjectivity. In that ULTRAWORLD, she investigated consciousness as a virtual construction, like our thinking, our consciousness, to understand that what we do is a virtual construction, how we understand the world. And she simulates the transformation of the human within it. And Susanne, first of all, because we come to your work, where are you at the moment and what time is it?
It's 6 o'clock in the evening and I am in south of Germany. This is actually my boyfriend's old room. I mean, because we're at his parents' home, and this is the room he used to be in. And my parents, they're like, I don't know, a few kilometers from here. They're not so far away. We used to go to the nearly the same schools. It was schools next to each other. And I fancied him when I was 15 and he was 18. I always saw him on the bus. And then we didn't see each other for 20 years. And now we're together for 6 years and working together. So all my past work I've done with him. He's a visual artist. So every time we come here to south of Germany, we can visit both our parents, which is quite funny. So yes.
That's quite lucky, quite beautiful. So is it Bavaria or southern Germany?
It's Baden-Württemberg.
Baden-Württemberg.
So it's near the Black Forest, actually. There's a lot of forest here.
So that's quite amazing. So what is going on? Are Berlin artists leaving Berlin?
I don't know if they are leaving Berlin. It's sometimes good to leave Berlin, but I think it's a good city to come back to always. I feel very at home in Berlin. And I have to say, Berlin has been quite generous to its artists. I don't know if you heard about it, but during this difficult time where people couldn't work and had no income, that the city gave artists, and you could just apply for it, and the next day you got money on your account, like 5,000 euros. And I was lucky I didn't have to do it because I still got paid at that time, but a lot of my friends got the money and it really helped them. And that was just such a great gesture. I thought it was amazing that this suddenly can happen. And you could just apply for it and get it, and you don't have to pay it back, and you don't have to account for it. And it's, yeah, sometimes these things are possible. So yeah, it was a moment where I thought, yes, it's beautiful to live in a city that's able to do that. Yeah.
It's just stunning, especially compared to the situation in New York, where I think even artists from the Metropolitan Opera haven't been paid since March, and nothing has been given. There are absolutely no jobs, whether they're musicians, technicians, actors, directors. Everything is closed, and so much is based anyway, as you know, on non-profit, on donations, and it's a most difficult time. So that sounds really like an earthly paradise, but it also does show that this city is a city of the arts, and I think, I'm sure no one will forget what it did. Even Great Britain, I think, just donated or gave $2 billion towards the arts institutions and to the arts. But here, of course, it's a complicated, complex situation. So where were you when it all happened? What were you doing? And when the news came that things shut down?
We were rehearsing in Munich. Our last work was Oracle. So we were into the rehearsals, I think, about 2 weeks. And in the beginning, everybody was, yeah, this will pass, this will blow over really quickly. And then suddenly they said no shows anymore. And then it was, okay, you have to leave and go back as soon as possible. And then, yeah, we had to leave. Everybody had to leave, and we had a big crew of people also from Brazil, because we had a lot of technical stuff we were working on. So everybody had to go back, and we went back to Berlin and stayed there for the next 2 months, not knowing if we would be able to continue the work or not. And in between, I completely abandoned it because I thought it's not going to be possible to finish it. But amazingly enough, at the end of May, suddenly in Bavaria, they said, okay, it's possible to rehearse again with certain measures. And we were able to come back and complete the work and show it to audience. So that has actually been possible in Munich. In Berlin, it's not possible yet. So for us, it was, we were so lucky. And Oracle is an installation, and it was, we meant to do it for 4 people, so you can pass through it as a group. But now it was even possible, because of the COVID situation, to do it for 1 person, which is such a great luxury. So you can walk through the installation on your own, and you go through different rooms and situations, and you get to meet the Oracle, which is a robot. And we could show it. I mean, it was amazing. So for me, this is a very strange time where some people are still in this situation of lockdown and thinking how to deal with it. And we already had a premiere. We already had a possibility to show the work. Yeah, it's quite crazy, actually.
How did it feel rehearsing? I guess, did you have all that mask, or what were the restrictions? And
yes, we all had masks and keep and we were supposed to keep distance. And someone, how do you say that? Virologe.
virologist?
Virologist, exactly, came, and we walked through the whole installation, and she told us what was possible and what not, and then we adapted things. And but it was very easy. Somehow my work is very corona proof somehow, because they're all keeping their distance anyway, and they're not talking. It's playback, which means you can even get closer than if you, because often in German theater, there's a lot of shouting and running, and that's
loud shouting, yes.
Yes, naked shouting and running, that's a cliche, but it's often true. And so with me, it's very rigid, and they don't talk themselves. So I also, with ULTRAWORLD, which you saw, we made it corona proof, and we didn't have to change a lot. So they're wearing kind of shields, see-through shields, which I like a lot because I think they're quite beautiful. So, and then I could just, because we're going to show the work in Austria. So a lot is still happening in my case, which is not the case for other people. I know that. So it's, I'm talking from a different position here. Yeah.
And how did it feel for you as an artist to say to work in?
You mean?
Well,
yeah.
Was that you adapted fast, or did something happen that was even better or worse? Or
well, I think I'm always someone who adapts very fast. I think when you work in theater, you always, because things never work out the way you intended them to work out, always something happens and it doesn't go like you planned it to go. So I think as a director or an artist in the theater, you have to have that mindset anyway. So I tried to, especially with the shields, we said, okay, let's use the shields, but really make them into something beautiful. We put little lights into the shields, so they are like lit up faces in the dark. And I really thought, okay, how can I use? I had the feeling that also the audience that came was very open, very vulnerable, because of course it was just after lockdown and people were allowed to go somewhere again and kind of meet actors. It was quite powerful. So I always try to see what can I use of this situation. And I was working with Oracle. I was very interested in the idea of incubation. So this ancient Greek practice where you would go to a sacred place and then go lie down in a dark place, sometimes for days and nights. And
caves, often, right?
Caves, exactly. And you were either sick or in crisis, or you had a question, and often there was also some kind of oracle, and then in dreams you would get answers or healing. So it was very much a place of healing. So of course, coming out of this lockdown situation and all these questions that we asked ourselves during that time were very valid. In the Oracle installation, also people asked the Oracle a lot of things concerning what's going to happen in the future, what's my place in it, what am I supposed to do, how can I deal with it, and that idea of incubation, so not going out, not engaging, not getting everything from outside, but trying to be confronted with yourself, which is very difficult and we have not learned to do and we run away from often. And to see if theater can be a place, a kind of sacred place in a way, where we can go, if that's possible. I mean, we'll see how it will continue in the future, but still this idea that it's a place where we can ask profound questions about ourselves and the world and the reality we live in. So coming out from that kind of incubation period and being able to practice it in a sense, because we do not have these ritual centers or rituals at all anymore. So I have the feeling maybe we need to try and build them again. And for me, theater has this power, is this place of being in the here and now with other people. So that's something I'm trying to work on.
Mm-hmm. How interesting how you connect a most ancient tradition. I know for some of the oracles, I mean, you had to go through walkways cut into stones, hundreds, I mean, they're very small, and to get to these places where you then spend time alone. Some say that even fumes would come out of the earth. But often there was a prophet, a seer, or an oracle, a woman, or it was a person. So you had a robot So tell us about your idea of the post-human and that new technology which you...
Yeah, I think technology makes it possible for us to ask questions about who we are. So it's not so much that I'm so much into technology and I think the future is going to be so different and more exciting than it is now, but it is because we're so confronted with technology. I think it gives us the possibility to ask ourselves, but who are we? Who is this human being being thrown onto earth? What's my purpose here? So I think I use technology to look at the human being again and to ask what makes a human being, and also how is it that we put ourselves in a kind of hierarchy, and everything beneath us is that. And also, of course, I mean, it's being talked about a lot this past time. Maybe it's not a very good idea to do that. So I'm using technology as a metaphysical means, I would say. And also this idea about virtual reality. I'm not so much interested in, you know, gaming or wearing these VR masks to go into different reality. I have the feeling what the reality we live in is a kind of virtual reality that we create with our own thinking, in a sense. So I'm trying to go into that and to ask maybe different questions, and because it's something that I have the feeling we do not go often in our own lives, not go far enough with these questions. So I'm trying to create a space where we can ask these questions. And of course, I don't want to ask them only intellectually, or not at all intellectually maybe, but very much also with the body. And so then what does it mean to talk? What does it mean to not have a face anymore? To who are you if you don't talk yourself or you wear a mask? So yes, that's this is a kind of very personal research for me.
Mm-hmm. This time of incubation, let's say, that, and Corona, I guess one could include that for you also. What did something change for you? Did you get insights, or how did you experience as a person? How did you experience this time?
In the beginning, I was very excited because I thought something's happening in a big way, and I was open for it, I guess. And then, of course, because then the everyday life inside was going on, and it became more and more difficult. Also because, of course, we were with a little child, and then I thought, and so it's really very much about family life, and I didn't have much time to reflect on what I felt or what was going on. So there were quite there were periods where that were difficult, also because you don't know for how long this is going to take. I mean, it could be this is the new reality, and it is in a way, but then suddenly it was over. So lockdown was over, and we could jump back into rehearsals. And somehow I don't think I can already really talk about it. I have the feeling it's too early to make conclusions somehow, because it has just happened and it's such a big thing. So I think it will take years and years to really process it and find answers, and also to work with it. You know, as artists, you let things pass through you and then see where it takes you in the work. So it's far too early to be able to to also really find language for it, I guess.
You have a feeling it's over from that Germany went through it?
Yeah, it's, I mean, everyone, of course, is talking about the second wave. And at some point, I stopped looking at the numbers, I have to say. So I also didn't read the news anymore. So because I had the feeling, for me, it didn't help me. So it was also in this idea of incubation. Okay, then I'm trying to go deeper somewhere else and not look outside so much. And for me, it stayed abstract because I knew one person who had it, but very, very mild symptoms. And so I could not, in a sense, experience it myself. I could experience the measures that were being taken, but the virus to me was, and still is, abstract. And that's something really difficult, because how do you deal with something that is, you're being told is there, but you have no experience with it except what's the consequences of it because trying to protect yourself from it. So that's something I'm still thinking about. What does that mean, and how can you react to it in a very personal way, that you do not just listen what someone else tells you and then you do it, but that you find your own way in it. And that's something that's also maybe also too early, because we can only listen to what other people tell us and the numbers and the situation. So I don't know, maybe it's different in the US and New York, that you really see what it does, I guess. So yeah, it depends probably also which country you live in.
Yeah. No, here I think it's still in full range. New York is better. There was one day without the corona deaths around the country, and I think in 38 or 40 states it's going up in dramatic numbers. I think Los Angeles, as I said, just decided to close all schools for the fall. So you say we're looking for answers, we were talking to each other, but tell us about the idea of the robot oracle. How was it? Artificial intelligence project, and what answers did the robot help to find people to get answers? What did it give? Or how did it work? Or what was the idea behind it?
So the idea was that you would get prepared before you met the oracle, because you can't just walk in and go straight to the oracle and ask your question. You really need to, in a sense, cleanse and think about the question you want to ask and get into a different state of mind. So first you met the kind of priests, actors that would talk to you. Then you had to lie on beds. We call them incubation beds. You had to go to an incubation tank, and you had to stay in a room and be silent with one actor. So it's a kind of going through different stages before you were able to meet the oracle. And then you would go into a room, and there was a robot arm and an eye, and you would talk to it. And the thing with artificial intelligence is, before I started working with it, my expectations, what artificial intelligence were much higher than they are now, I have to say, because there's a lot of work behind the scene that you have to do. So it's always, it's a lot of testing that you have to see, okay, what do people ask and how can we answer that? So it's a lot of human work, actually. So the idea of artificial intelligence, I got a different picture of that. So, but what you can do is you can ask the robot 3 questions, and it goes into a kind of database where it comes up with answers. And of course, I also prepared the database, but it's also random. It just picks answers from the internet. So it's a combination of that. And for the database, I was accessing texts from different spiritual masters and trying to come up with answers that are so all encompassing, but so specific at the same time that you feel that you're being meant, which was very interesting work, because you have to think of what kind of questions will people ask and how can you respond to that, even if you don't know what they're going to ask. So we built a kind of dialogue tree to do that. And people, it was amazing because people were so open and they asked such existential questions in that room that I was not prepared for. So in a sense, it's as if we built something and we could hardly deal with it, what it became. It is as if people are much more open toward a robot than they would be in front of a different human being. And that is really something I'm still thinking about, because I also want to continue the work and develop it further. What does it mean, and what's my responsibility in it? How do I because I had the feeling I'm no longer a theater director. What do I do as a theater director with people being so vulnerable and open and trusting us or this situation? It has been a really amazing experience, and it takes me somewhere else where I feel I have to learn something about something that I don't know exactly what it is yet.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's a beautiful idea to go back to that. Perhaps what so many people say, theater started in a shamanistic tradition, to put on the fur of the animal you were hunting, and you said something, dance something, and practice some form of magic, and a connection to a spiritual life. And it also reminds of Joseph Weizenbaum's early experiments in the 70s, when he had pretended the computer would know and could answer you, but he just had random answers. And John Cage, of course, worked with chance and said that this being a significant artistic uttering. Also, Cunningham had the computer do his choreography. But my question also is the post-human which you deal with, and the world, the virtual world, and meditation. Do you feel theater in a way has kind of lost its way from this origin, from that kind of space seeking, from the idea of meditation? Do you meditate? What is it a practice for you? Do you want to integrate that in your work?
I'm not an experienced meditator, so I do it like I think a lot of people, on and off. And when I don't feel so good, I think, okay, maybe I should start meditating again. But I've never really done it as a practice. But it's something I have a longing somehow. And it's something that I feel in the theater that I also long for. So I'm trying to create something in the theater that I have a feeling would also help me get into a different space where I can experience reality in a different way. So it's not so much about reflecting or researching, but really about experiencing. I once had a work that was called Women in Trouble, that was at the Volksbühne in Berlin. And I was talking to someone who, after the performance, and he told me, and he didn't even like it that much. So it was not to his taste, I think. But he said, I felt so strange leaving the theater and going outside. It was as if reality itself was somehow suddenly very strange. And I walked to my car, and suddenly the whole idea of a car was very strange. And other people looked different. And I got into a car and I drove to a red light, and it all felt so weird. And and I thought I was so beautiful, because so it didn't matter if he liked it or he didn't like it, but it is as if it was suddenly your own perception of reality changed, and that the theater, him spending 2 hours in the theater and then going outside again and being able to see it with different eyes, even if it was just for, I don't know, 5 minutes or something like that. That felt so strong to me that I thought, this is for me what it's about. And then creating a kind of ritual, because it is this practice where the actors take you somewhere, take you to a kind of place where you can, maybe you can go there by meditating. I don't know, because I'm not, as I said, I'm not a regular meditator, so I've never been there by myself. But I have the feeling in theater, if you use the right means and you believe in theater and it has that power, that you can go there together as a group.
Mm-hmm. That it's a space for an experience, like looking at a painting. Bob Wilson always sometimes said, I think once famously, that I think lots of European theater is fascist, because they tell you what to think, the playwright, the director, it's not open. I like to look at things and experience a landscape, or trees, or the idea of animals and things. People said in your work, it almost looks like a second life, that kind of online experience, an early one that existed, or there are virtual reality sets. Your actors don't speak. Most of it is recordings, right? If I also understand right. So tell us a bit about that idea, because it's such a unique and original and authentic discovery you made.
Yes, I think it comes from the fact that I always went to the theater and I had the feeling I cannot relate to it the way human beings are shown on stage. I always had a longing to be much more drawn in by the actors than the actors showing me what they're feeling and what they're experiencing and shouting it or putting it out there. So I was very much thinking, how can I make it more intimate, personal through the voice? And that's when I discovered that through doing playback, and we recorded the voices in the studio, where you can go very quiet and have a very different kind of tone, which is in a way kind of very film-like. And I like that a lot. But it was also that I had the feeling, what I was talking about earlier, this idea of how the human being is represented on stage is through conventions that we have accepted as a kind of realism, that we say, yes, this is how people are. But if I look at people on the street or just in a cafe, I find people, if I would see two people talking to each other in front of a supermarket, let's say, and I would put them just exactly like they are and how they're talking and the kind of language they're using, and put them like that on stage, it would be a very absurd scene. So I've always had the feeling that we do not have the right means to show what reality is really like on stage, and reality in everyday life. And reality can be, everything. I mean, it can sometimes be very, very strange. And so I was searching for means to do that, to convey this kind of feeling that I sometimes have when I'm just watching people on the street, and find an atmosphere on stage to be able to convey this feeling, but also how people, how the actors would move and or not move on stage. So the conventional means of portraying people on stage did not work for me. So I had to invent something else. And I did it step by step. So in the beginning, I was still working with actors who talked on stage and used their own voices. And then it got more and more radical, because I thought, okay, if I get away with this, then I'm going to go even further. Yes, it's also trying to push theater to its own boundaries, even thinking, are there boundaries? When does it stop being theater? But very much to go back to the root of theater somehow. So what you said about the shamanistic practices is very important to me. So I'm trying to go back to something that's very essential of theater, because of course you have this moment as an artist where I think, why bother? Why theater? And that's when I thought, no, it has to be theater, because there's such immense power in the fact that we're together in this room, we're quiet as an audience, we're in the dark often, and we spend this time together to go somewhere. I think that's so strong, and there's hardly any other places that do that. So in a sense, it is something sacred. And the idea that the actors are like robots and are this idea of the post-human, it's not so much, like I said before, that I use technology to find out really what's essential about human beings, I guess. So it's very much about the human being and not so much about robots, I guess.
Mm. I mean, that's just stunning. That on one hand, you have this ancient, tradition of a spiritual path, or meditating, or finding answers for the essential questions of life. On the other hand, your stage, and perhaps next to, I remember sequences from Bob Wilson's Cologne, Civil Wars, where the astronauts were on the ladders, or maybe Richard Foreman work. I have never seen anything as in its plasticity, something from the future, or a modeled virtual world, as in your world, as in your ULTRAWORLD. Was something that, was a message from the future in a way, that you think, this is a way for us as audiences to experience this. And then if you have a plastic shield on as an actor or not, it doesn't really matter. If you hear the voice or not, it doesn't matter. Like in film, it is of course recorded anyway. So your research, and you did a Chekhov also, I think, The Three Sisters.
Yes.
Which, I don't know where it fit in your career, which of course people say is one of the most realistic representation, even so if you look at it, so highly constructed. It's so what people say and what they do is the complete opposite. A stranger comes into a familiar setting, everything changes, then he leaves, but it's still the same. Sisters sing at the end outside in the garden, and you think that's ritual, that's a normal, but nobody really also does it. So what was your interest in then the post-human and the Chekhov? How do you get it together?
It was, in fact, it was a very simple thought about it that led me to do this play, which is the idea that the three sisters are caught in an eternal loop, because we play them over and over again. It's one of these classics that you can find in nearly every theater in Germany and all over the world. So they're being put on stage over and over again for decades, and they never get to Moscow. So they're caught in this eternal loop, and we as an audience are part of that, because we go to the theater and we know we're going to watch them not getting to Moscow. It's something that fascinated me, because I thought, okay, this idea of this loop is very much part of these classics. So we watch the Three Sisters not getting to Moscow. We watch Medea killing her children over and over again. We resurrect them, put them back on stage, and watch them do it again, like strange puppets or avatars that we, you know, and we watch Hamlet saying to be or not to be over and over again. So what is this need to watch the same story over and over again of people not succeeding, dying, and not getting anywhere? So the Three Sisters, for me, was the idea that they're stuck in this room, in a sense, and never get to Moscow. And I combined it with Nietzsche, the idea of the eternal recurrence. So that, what do you do when a demon comes to you at night and asks you to live the life you're living now over and over again, or just once again? Do you throw yourself on the floor with desperation and say, oh my God, this is hell? Or do you say, yes, I can do that? So this is very existential, crucial question. It's really the question of how do you live your life, and is it worth living this life again for you? So that, and being posed that question already does something to you, of course, because you take a distance, you look at your life, and you think about it. So for me, that was the idea of this eternal loop of the Three Sisters, then putting this question out, and the idea, how much consciousness do these three women have about. So it's a meta question about them being stuck in this situation and being watched by us over and over again. And is there a possibility of freeing them, which is not getting them to Moscow? But for me, it's in a sense what we all have to do, that we have to do it in the here and now, the situation we're in. So it's also a good image for the lockdown, I think. You're in your kitchen or wherever you are, and this is where you have to do it. And this is very difficult, and we've never learned it. That's also part of meditation, of course, sitting on that pillow and doing it here and now. And yes, so that's a very personal question that I used Chekhov's Three Sisters for it, and I could not get them there, I have to say, in the sense that so that's something also in my work, that I always watched characters on stage, the characters I created, not being able to reach this kind of consciousness. And I thought, I have to make a work where this at least happens at some point, even if it's for a short moment, because if I don't, then why would I think it's possible? So, but I guess it's connected to my own path, in a sense. It's not something that's that I have experienced it and now I'm going to show it on stage. No, it's something that I'm also struggling with and searching for. So with ULTRAWORLD, it was something that I thought, okay, let's have the main character have a journey, a kind of hero's journey, where there might be the possibility of understanding something or experience something at the end, where he can break through the idea, this illusion that he has created about his own reality, and be able to access something else. What that something else is, I don't know, but I wanted it to try it on stage and see if it was possible.
Mm. So in a way, still a Joseph Campbell hero story, but in an adapted 21st century lab experiment for theater. So how did you visualize? I think there were aliens involved, but just for our listeners and me, it would be interesting for the three sisters. How did you show these a loop? How did you approach that visually and dramatically in the dramaturgy?
So it was also because we work a lot with, so the idea of the virtual reality, we always think, because the work is of course very important, that I work with a team of artists together, that video sound installation, it's very important. So we created a set where there was a little white cube as high up, and around it was a projection, but a projection of a different room. So it was a room within a room. It was 3D within 2D. And that created already a very strange effect, as if the three sisters were in some kind of strange space shuttle or something like that. And then I had actually, the whole play consisted of practically, I think, one scene out of Chekhov, but variations of it. So there was always a little variation of the scene, but in between there were blackouts with really loud noise. And then the light went back on again and the scene was a bit changed. So sometimes they wore masks. Sometimes suddenly there were older women on stage. Sometimes you could see them the actors in their private clothing. So it was the same scene, but as if it was in parallel worlds or in different time frames. Some more in kind of Chekhov's time maybe, but not, I mean, we didn't use costumes like that, but it could have been. And then suddenly very modern, and then suddenly going back again. And then suddenly they looked like aliens. And then suddenly, so it was very much switching, bam, 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 from one reality to the next. And as if it's different three sisters in parallel realities. And we really tried to use the theater machines to be able to do that. We wanted to create some kind of magic, I think, because I had this idea, how can we switch from one scene to the next, but not like in theater, but as if it were film in a sense. And so we really worked on that. And I think it had that effect eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from what I could see and read about it, it's stunning, because it's easy to have ideas and what you're talking about, but to find something on stage that works, and you did. It's astonishing and stunning, and also makes us, look with big eyes with wonder again on something that we think we knew, and we all have seen so many and of the three sisters. How do you match then images, let's say in the ultra world, with the words, perhaps, because that the only thing I was thinking about, the visual was so strong. These worlds were the projections you use, the clarity of it, the crispness, and then the writing. How do you approach it? Can that really match, or how do you select the words, for example, the language you also put as a layer on the movements and these incredible costumes and lighting, but also the projection? How do you choose it, and what's the reason?
With ULTRAWORLD, I was of course different than Three Sisters because I kind of composed it myself, and I use text very much in the sense like text passes through us every day. So what we read on the internet, what we say to each other in conversations, a lot of snippets I use from video games. I sometimes watch YouTube videos of interviews between, I don't know, actors, famous actors, and an interview. I write that down, and then I use the comments that are written underneath. So it's really, this is I create text from from the masses of text that we encounter every day, and usually text that we wouldn't use in a poetic way. So if someone sends me a WhatsApp message, it could end up in a play because so it's in a sense what I think it's called a bit, this idea of uncreative writing.
Mm-hmm.
Kenneth Goldsmith, I think his name is.
Kenneth Goldsmith, yeah, Kenneth, a great, who runs UbiWeb and who we also meet here on the program, a great friend of our center.
Yes, that's fascinating, that idea. So it's what I also talked about earlier, that I watch two people in the street, how they move and how they talk to each other, but also the kind of text, how we talk to each other in half sentences, and then the grammar sometimes is not quite correct, and then we say and then we laugh, and then we start the sentence all over again. This kind of way of talking that you don't usually hear in the theater, I try to use. So we ask people to come to the studio and read the scenes that I wrote, but they don't actually get the whole scene, but also only the lines they say, but they don't have any context and they don't know what they're reacting to. So it's also kind of strange the way when it's put back together again, it doesn't fit quite well. It's not like they play a scene, but we make a new composition out of the sentences they read. And then other people read the answers to a question someone else did. And you get a very, very different kind of vibe through that. And then sometimes people in the studio ask me questions. They say, how did I do that? Or was that the right way? And we use that as well. So it ends up in the performance and the actors playback that. Yeah, I think it sounds very strange if I talk about it like this, but you probably would have to see it and experience it to know what I'm talking about. And this has become more and more important. So the kind of in-between talk that people do in the studio is a big part of the performance in the end.
Yeah. So it's fascinating that you do try to capture something real, or the reality in these imaginary symbolic spaces, full of almost a second life or virtual existence. And there's some connection to the quiet theater movement, that comes from Japan, where you look at the moment. You take a knife, you cut a zucchini, and say, which way do I cut it? And that's what life is about, in a way. That's just, you have to focus on it and know about it. And Kenneth says, uncreative writing ideas, which are so significant. What I find most fascinating about your work, and I think you touched on it about the reaction of the audience member and Thomas Oberender, who also connected, and I want to thank Thomas, and he talked also about you. And spoke about it and sent me a podcast from Thomas Metzinger, a German philosopher, who talks about virtual realities, and that what we see, our mind processes reality. We think it's real, but it's a dream. We just constructed, our nerves, our brain, our cells create something, and we don't know it, and we have no chance of escaping. And so the idea of that kind of a virtual reality which you touch on, and so are you interested in that, and the ideas of Metzinger, what do they mean to you?
Yes, so it's this idea of the reality I'm being told that is this reality. I sometimes doubt it. Let's say it like this. And I'm trying to find means to take a different observation point and look at it in a different way. So that what you say, it's a construct we make ourselves in the society we're in. It's very much a construct. We're being born and we get handed a script immediately that we have to learn by heart, and then we do it, and but we think it's our own words. So we think, but I'm an individual, what I'm saying is very unique, but and we don't realize that often we're talking in scripts that were being, that were being written for us by whom? I mean, that's a whole different question. So I'm trying to find out how can I have this feeling in a sense, but how do I find out about it? And there are, of course, ancient sacred practices that deal with it. It's in every sacred tradition is the idea of awakening. So you wake up and you realize that it was a dream, and you wake up in a different in a different state of being, where you suddenly see that it was all an illusion, but an important illusion. It doesn't mean that this doesn't matter or it's not important. So I'm always trying to find people who can talk about it in a way that I can access it, because it seems when you first hear about that or think about it, it seems very far away, or something you think, how can I possibly, it's the idea of enlightenment, I guess. But awakening, I find that word very, very interesting. So what does it mean? What I dreamt last night, is it less real than what I experienced during the day? Because that's what we think. Dreams do not, they're not important. It's just something. I had this strange dream, and you forget about it as soon as you wake up. What if life itself is a very strange dream? So I'm very fascinated about this. And I mean, when you saw ULTRAWORLD, I mean, you also probably saw that the idea of like this film Matrix, it's very much this idea, that we're in this matrix, and how can we surpass it? How can we find our way out of it? And but the matrix is in your own head. I'm not so much interested in this idea that, we're kept in a system that controls us. This is, I think, in the matrix, it doesn't go far enough. So the idea is you are your own controller. Of course, it's part of a system, but so I'm trying to make theater that sort of deals with that.
Yeah, and I do think this is the great contribution also then of your work, to radically show that the vision of our world is also already a virtual vision, that what we have on our head, which I think Richard Foreman once said at the Segal, we see our entire body, but we don't see our heads, which is odd, but we don't think about it. But that what we have over our shoulders is kind of a headset already. It's a VR set that experience a world we kind of combine together, and we don't really know it. It's a dreamlike. We accept it as a reality, but it's not. And that perhaps for that moment to question what's our own reality and a reality on a stage, this little irritation, like your audience member said, now what's real? Was that real? And you make you aware of it. And as Metzinger says, we will never be able to escape this. What, as you also say, what we have to perform, the gender roles, let's do this butlers that we are told, how we behave as men, women, and all that. But what we can do is to become aware of the process of recognition, of the process of working through what we perceive, to know we are processing something which he claims also slow drugs, whatever, you see the wall moving and talking, says, no, it's not. But you are a bit closer how you perceive the world, and it's different than you think and what gets put over. So I think the idea of theater as a questioning model, modus, apparatus, robot, that might be able for a moment to help us to understand these world, these immersive world, as Thomas would say, the immersion work he does also in Berlin, that is sensational. So what are your thoughts now? Did this time of Corona, did it deepen this? Do you have new projects? Do you say, no, I'm going to do this not anymore, but I'm going to focus on something else? Where does it lead you? These really, I think, also in Germany was 2 months at least, or 2.5, of you would say of silence, or of taking up time out of normal life. What is there something you focus on in your upcoming work that's difficult?
It's funny how this coincides with my plans, because I decided to take time out. So I'm not going to do another production for the next more than 1.5 years. So it's actually, I'm prolonging this time of incubation in a sense for myself, and to try and go deeper. Because of course, always I'm using the work to do that, but you always have to put out a new production, or you have to. I mean, I'm also lucky in that I can do that, but I have a great longing for thinking, studying, researching, going deeper, experiencing, also immersing myself in some kind of practice. So that's what I'm going to do, and I think that I hope that I will, I can go further and deeper in that path that I'm already walking on. But I have the feeling you always need some time to reflect on what you've done and not run into the next project again. So I'm going to do that. And the next one is, I think, going to be about female mystics, but that's still just a very vague idea. But
like Hildegard von Bingen or something.
Yeah.
But if you say, I want to go deeper, how do you actually do that? What do you do? Like, you get up in the morning, you have your boyfriend, you're in the south of Germany, but how do you go deeper for 1.5 years? What do you do?
How do you go deeper? I asked the oracle that, and I got a really pornographic answer to it.
What was it?
Yeah, well, go deeper. I mean, yeah. So what I want to do is go back to the Bible. I decided to go and study the Bible because I think now I have the tools to read the text in a way that I've never been able to read it before. So that's something I want to do. And that means getting up, sitting down, reading, writing, and then just see what comes out of that. But also, like I said, I have a few, like Hildegard von Bingen, Jeanne d'Arc, because it's always men I encounter. Also, when I talk about the great masters, it's men. So I'm interested in what is a female voice. What are the female voices in that? What mystical experiences, and then talked about it. In what kind of language were they talking about it? So it's really reading these texts and then seeing where it takes me. And that's the exciting thing, that now I don't have to produce something. I can see wherever it takes me. And yes, it's very much sitting at the table reading, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Like ancient, almost monkish practice, yeah.
Yes. That's something that I have a great longing for, I have to say, yeah.
And the idea also then, of questioning reality and finding that mystical experience, or what we say in great theater, when we experience it, which sometimes happens perhaps in sports. You watch 100 games, but one game is special. You watch so many plays, but sometimes there's something that touches you so deeply and changes your life, and that there were practices, as you say, ancient practices of mystic is people who do meditation or yogis to try to capture what's beyond what we normally perceive as reality, and if there's is there, as Gertrude Stein would say. So you studied art in Amsterdam. You did not study theater performance, or was it a hybrid form? How did you get into theater?
No, it was theater directing. So it was very much, yeah. So it started out quite in a classic way, I guess. Well, in Holland, it's not as, you don't work so much on the big stage, but more in the black box theater. It was a very direct kind of theater style where audience and performers are very close to each other, and the distance is not so big as in most big German theaters, I would say. I mean, so I started out as very much, like making theater work like everybody else. I think it's, so yes, it took me quite some time to find this form that I'm using now. It was not something that I had access to right away.
What was the moment when you said, this is, do you remember, was that a rehearsal, a day, or a play, or?
It was a play that I did in Munich, and it's when we decided, we were halfway through the rehearsals, and we decided, okay, we're going to do it all playback. So the actors are not going to talk on stage anymore. And it was a very difficult decision for me to make, because I thought, am I allowed to do that? So, so that's something. It's also talking about this idea construction in your own head, that you think this is how theater is supposed to be, and I have to, follow that. So making this step, and it was kind of sleepless night where I thought, okay, if I don't do it now because I'm afraid, then I have to stop. So it was very clear, that thought. And then I came back to the rehearsal room and said to everyone, okay, let's do it. And now it doesn't sound like such a big thing, but then it was as if I had opened a door within myself where I thought, okay, if I can do this, then I can do anything. And that was very freeing. But I had to open this door myself, of course. And before I hadn't been able to do that. So that was very liberating, I have to say. And now I have the feeling, anything is possible. Anything is possible on stage and in life, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, it's quite amazing, especially in Germany. If there's anything we Germans are proud of, the Sprechtheater, the spoken theater, the training that goes into voice and speaking on the stage. And to say now we use recording, and we, as a comment, we also listen to the technological voice, which we are used to through the speakers of film. So it's quite an invention, especially if you say it helps you to find what the essential questions are really about, or that incubation time that perhaps theater could be the oracle that gives you answers for things you are looking for. I mean, it's stunning that Berlin produces artists like you or Ida Müller and Wege Wingard, who also such a fantastic artists in an idiosyncratic way to express the world, who also started out with an Ibsen, because also they said this is what you put on a form in Norway, and you get money for first productions. But still, it goes beyond that in their research into that work. Who are your heroes? Who do you look up to if you look in the contemporary world of theater and performance? Whose work do you follow in theater and performance?
Well, just whom you mentioned just now, Wege Wingard and Ida Müller, I saw a work of theirs, also Ibsen, and it was 12 hours long, and it was a whole night through, and I was somewhere else. I don't know. It was so incredible, this feeling, and I thought, if theater can do this, so I was high when I watched that. It was really, I've never experienced anything else. So I'm very grateful there are artists like this and who go as far as they do. It's, yes, it's very courageous. And so yeah, I'm a big fan of their work. I haven't seen anything in a long time now because they haven't produced in Germany for quite some time now. So I hope they will come back with something. Very much hope so. Yeah, so they are very.
Who else is part of your system of thinking?
Romeo Castellucci is someone that I greatly admire. Also that he tries to go to places you could call in a sense nearly mystical, or he tries to do something else in the theater that you don't usually see. So I saw his work at the Ruhr Triennale also a few years ago, Sacre du Printemps, and it was these machines that were dancing to it, and it was one of the most beautiful dances I ever saw, and it was machines. And they were spreading white bone powder all over the stage. And it was from cows, I think, bone powder from cows. And in the end, when the performance was finished, 2 human beings in white protection suits came in to clean the stage. So I thought that was beautiful. So the machines did this very, very poetic dance, and it was 2 human beings in the end that cleaned up the stage. That was, to me, that had a great influence on me, that performance, I have to say, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's stunning. And what else? We're coming closer to the end. What do you read or listen to in this time of Corona, or in general, next to what you already mentioned? What research do you also do, or what secret vices you might have about what do you
yeah, so I read a lot of what you would call, I guess, esoteric texts, very much. That there's an author called Peter Kingsley, and it was through him that I discovered the ancient Greek practices, and and also he wrote a book about Segal. So that's something I'm also working on, and I bought the red book.
And I have that too, the big one, the facsimile.
Yeah. Well, I gave it to my partner for his birthday, but I used it immediately. So and that's fascinating. So that's work, and of course it takes you. I mean, it takes you years and years and years to even begin to uncover or discover the magnitude of what it is and does. And I'm turning 43 this summer, and I think I needed to. I think you need to be at least 40 before you can start this kind of work. It's the second half of life that you. I couldn't have done this, 10 years ago or something like that. So it's just now that I feel I can get a bit closer to understand or be able to experience it myself. To be able to understand these ideas of these people. So it's very much, and I don't know, I read so much. I read 5 books at the same time, and always take notes from this and that.
What are your 5 books at the moment?
Oh my God. I'm reading The Soul's Code by James Hillman, which is
I know very much.
You know it? Yes.
Oh, yeah, I met him once and had a conversation. I have loved many of his books. Soul's Code, about the question of the soul and where he got so attacked by the world of reintroducing that term, and he quotes artists as their as heroes. It's a stunning book, on the biographies.
Yes. And it's very interesting too that and I also think that would help so much, that we don't look at our lives as something that, you know, a kind of trauma and something we were not able to do and it's our parents' fault, but very much this idea of Plato, that you are in heaven and your soul chooses its lot, so it's destiny, and it chooses it very consciously, and all the hard things that you're going to experience, and then you pass through I don't know what it's called, but you pass through different stages, and then you're born and you forget it all. But it's this idea and of the daimon, that you have something in you that wants to be realized, but it's also, it can be a very hard fate that you have to live through. So, and that, of course, with all kind of idea of therapy and asking the questions, why did this happen to me, and turn it around and say it's this you kind of, or your soul chose, and it's your path. I think it's very,
I think he says it's a mixture, like I think God sits on a throne, the souls swirl around, and by chance and by choice you come something what you choose, and your life's work is to get through that as a mythical or adventure which you choose to take on. And he says it's a way to at least to look at the world, you know, and to understand and deal with it, like the old Greeks and the Ulysses and all of it. Great. And what else is on your plate?
What else? Because I just brought a few books. What did I bring? What else? I'm reading. I got into, I have something here. Can you read it? It's Russian fairy tales. And it's have you ever heard of Baba Yaga? No. It's this witch in the forest, and it's very much also this initiation idea that you have to go to the dark forest and meet the witch in order to grow up and to be full individual. And you have to, she nearly, you know, if you don't, you have to have solved 3 she asks you questions and you have to do the work for her, and if you don't do it correctly, she will eat you up. But if you do it, you can come back, and she gives you the fire and you can come back. And so I'm reading this to my daughter at the moment, but I also use it for myself because of course it's very rich, and so it's a kind of idea of fairy tales, myth, and how can you use them. So that's something I just discovered, these Russian fairy tales. So yeah, that's also
incredible,
something.
quite an eclectic a mixture, and that's how it should be, like also our talks. But this was really a fantastic a moment. Really thank you for sharing what's on your mind, and be in the moment also for this conversation. I think it's a great of great interesting to our listeners and me especially, and everybody else, and to see how is the mechanics, how does it work, what does one think about, what is the dramaturgy of theater, but also of life, and how do we approach things. And I think you really found answers, and they are stunning ones. I don't think your work has been to the US.
No, they're trying to get it to New York, but we'll see.
Will be tough in case you want to do your 1.5 year research and not going out and under confinement. Just move here. It will be much easier than in Berlin or Munich, where things have opened. Not sure if it's as much fun, but yeah, I think really this was a great privilege to hear from you and to know what's on your mind, and it's a fantastic way of sharing, and I hope also to our listeners it will give them some peace of mind to see how you are listening to it. Yesterday we had Ping Chong, is a great New York artist, Asian American who grew up in Chinatown, and he talked about his life, how it works, and he can still go out, so he made, inspired by Borges, a film, and looked at all the things in his apartment as an infinite world where you can travel, at least with your mind, and you're free. And if you're able to do it, but you do this also in your work. Tomorrow at the Segal Talk, we have the great Mabu Mines, a staple of New York City, Lee Brewer and Maud Mitchell, and they will talk what the time of Corona means for them. And Thursday we have Tiago Rodrigues. Do you know about him? A great Portuguese director.
I heard about him.
Yeah. Fantastic work. He did the work about the prompter, the souffleuse and theater, that idea, what it means. And Caridad Switch, member of the Latinx, as we would say, a community, a playwright, a translator, an essayist. I think originally from Cuba. She will share her work. Soon we also going to have Jacques Rancière, I think, will join us, and we will hear from tap dancers and many others. So really, thank you for taking the time. Thanks for HowlRound for hosting us, Vijay and Thea and Travis, and to the Segal team, Andy and Sanyang. And Susanna, I hope I didn't take you away for too long and from your time with your family. And I'm sure you're going to have now a nice Baden-Württemberg dinner waiting for you from one of the two families who are competing for sure to make you all happy. So it's really fantastic. Congratulations on all your work. And it's so interesting and to know what you are doing. It's important. We need to listen to artists in these times of Corona and confinement. And it's important what Susanne has said about that part, the incubation time, to prepare yourself, what she did symbolically in her oracle piece, that you lie down, you listen, you think, and you're ready, and you ask the right question. You might get some answers, but you still will have to make yourself the sense out of the answers you get. And this is what differs our time, perhaps from the 20th, 19th, 18th century, where everything was given to you as a meaning, as God-given, but it's no longer, we have to create our own. It's part of a suffering which we experience, but also a part, as Susanna said, of a great freedom, and to be in the moment and to accept where we are as a great reminder for also to change authentically and to engage in the world. So thank you so much, and I hope for our listeners you will join us back. And it's important that we have great theater and performance, but also a great audience, but also to understand that what we talk about is about you, the listener, the audience member, the spectator, and to be part of that great change. This has already taken place. It's taking place, and we might not see it because we are too close or we are too into our own virtual headsets. And so thank you so much, and thanks for Thomas Ober and again for connecting us. I hear you're also producing a book, or he's putting out a book about you and with essays, so I can't wait to hear about it. So goodbye, and I hope one day we'll see you and your work in New York. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.